The name of the parsha is Beha'alotcha, or some pronounce it as Beha'alotcha. And this refers to the first part of the first phrase in the parsha, which is still a continuation from a bit of Nase. If you remember, the opening phrase of Nase was that all of the princes brought their offerings, and Aaron was left standing. He was upset because he thought that maybe because of the sin of the golden calf, he still was being ignored, as it were, by God. And then Moshe Rabbeinu tells him, yours is going to be greater than theirs. Your participation is greater. What's going to be your participation? The lighting of the menorah. Right. So in last week's parsha, that's not discussed. When is this episode really explained? In this week's parsha, it says, Aaron, when you will when you light the lamps, of these six, you're going to light it with the three, the seven branch candelabra with the three lights on each side, pointing towards the center light. You will use a stepladder in order to light it. Until it's able to burn on its own. So that is the opening idea. That is the opening story or narrative of this week's Torah portion. Obviously, because the whole portion is referred to Beha'alotcha, we understand it based on a famous concept from the Shalach HaKadosh, that the name of the parsha is not random, even though you could say, well, it's a name because that's the first word or two words of the parsha. But rather, obviously, there's something really deep, something important. As parenthetically, just maybe a slight tangent, interesting that the Maharal, who was also one of the inspirations for the Tanya, just like the Shalach, had this similar idea when it came to Pirkei Avot, that the specific utterance, a specific quote of the sages was connected to the person that said it, something the Rebbe built on in the library, in Sichot, in his talks. But this idea is a very interesting one, that there's no randomness in Torah. There's no sort of just happenstance at this name and the parsha. No, there's obviously some kind of thematically, there's something that runs very deep, where the name and the rest of the parsha really connect. So therefore, Beha'alotcha is the beginning of the parsha, and there are a number of explanations. In other words, the first half of the Torah portion is really still connected to the Jews dedicating of the temple, of the order in which they traveled, of the fact that when they traveled, we're told that the cloud would rise and it would move forward, and it would descend. When it would rise, there would be trumpets sounded, and they would know they have to move forward. And when there was time to stop, so the cloud settled, and the Jews knew that this is where they had to settle. So the first part of the portion, the part of the parsha, was really very much an uplifting note. It's all about the temple. It's about dedication. It's about holiness. It's about moving forward. Then the second part of the parsha, literally, is a complete opposite. It is the Jews complaining, then just complaining. It doesn't even say about what. They were just kvetching. And then, there's a fire that rolls through the camp and the Jews killed. Then they complain about the man. Then they complain about not having meat. The deeper meaning of those things we're going to discuss later. Then, Moshe chooses the 70 elders. Then there's a prophecy in the camp that Moshe is not going to lead the Jews into the land of Israel. Then that there's that episode where Miriam and Aaron discuss Moshe's private life. Again, not the most positive sounding. And then finally, the conclusion, or rather before that is the conclusion of God agreeing to give the Jews meat because they asked for it, but because they were really looking for anything but, in other words, it was not a request, it was not something they were asking for in the proper way. That they didn't have to ask for it, and they were really more agitating against Moshe Rabbeinu and against Hashem. As a result, they were punished and they died. So How long and what is, again, we're going to discuss later. So you see there's almost within one parsha, two opposites. Two opposites from one extreme to the other. Now, how do we understand that if they're all referred to by as the same name? So we're going to go back again. This is sort of as a general introduction. We're going to go back to the beginning of what I said, which is Beha'alotcha and Eros. Aaron was commanded to light the menorah. Now, in the terminology in the study of Chassidus, the menorah plays a very interesting role, because the menorah, it says it contained 7 lamps, but it was cut out from one solid piece of gold. One solid piece of gold. The original menorah that Moshe Rabbeinu made, right? In other words, it wasn't put together; it was hewn out from the gold. So all of the 7 lamps were really, the menorah was all one. So within that, there's a number of important lessons, a number of important ideas that we can discuss, we can see. And one is that within the Jewish people, you have two, what seems to be opposites. You have obviously different directions, and by directions, you mean different modes, different aspects in the service of God. 7 being representative of the 7 qualities within a person's soul, 7 emotions within a person's soul. Each one of us has those 7, and also generally speaking, you can sort of divide. We're not speaking about Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Hasidic, Litvish. We're speaking really more on the level of expression. Some people, and again, a lot of these expressions are interwoven, but generally speaking, you have sort of the 7 patterns, seven emotions. And the idea there being is that even though they're different, but first of all, they're all made out of one solid piece of gold, which means that even though you can have Jews understanding that you have to emphasize certain ways of serving God more than another, ultimately it's all cut out from the same piece of metal. We're not different religions, God forbid. The one who lit the menorah was Aaron. Who was Aaron? Aaron, we are told, and we actually continue from last week's portion, he and his children were commanded to bless the Jews with Birkat Kohanim, the blessing of love. So the blessing of love, as it says, means 2 things. One, that the descendants of Aaron have the ability of blessing that the Jews should have love among them. The biggest blessing you can bestow on somebody is he or she should be able to feel and experience true love in their family, in their life, within themselves. I mean, it's an ability of connecting honestly to another person, to God, as a gift. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. Truly being loved and to love. Again, we're not speaking about just as a husband to wife or so on, but this is really knowing how to experience what that feels like. Ahavas Yisrael, loving your fellow Jew. I mean, it's an incredible thing. So the sons of Aaron were given the ability, the blessing that Jews should have love. Also, another definition is a blessing the Jews with love. In other words, they express the blessing in a way of love, through love. In other words, both ideas. One, that we should be blessed at having love, and also that they, to bless somebody with love in a loving kind of a way, which facilitates the blessing being stronger and quicker. And again, we discussed it a little bit last week. So here we have Aaron, who really embodied this idea, not just for himself, but for all future generations. And he was the one that was commanded to light the menorah. In other words, stepping back from just a literal understanding of what it means that Aaron lit the menorah, but really awakening and revealing within the Jew this ability of finding his way, his channel to connect to God, is something is done by Aaron with love. But interestingly enough, the ultimate purpose was that each flame should light till it burns on its own, which means that just inspiring somebody and inspiring somebody with love and warmth, it's important. But ultimately, that fire, that soul within the Jew should be able to burn on its own. His own fire or her own fire should be able to burn bright, right? It's because ultimately, what does fire express? This yearning and desire to be close to God. So just a short inspiration, a one-line thing, it's nice. But if you're already up to the task, you already got involved. So understand that the task is to let it grow. Let the fire grow within yourself, within others. Feed it. Feed the fire. Make sure that that it's guided and then it grows in the right direction. So that is the first part of this week's Torah portion. Really, the idea, the positivity of moving forward, of a Jew really finding his way back to God, right? Also, soon going to read about, hear about the opportunity of bringing the second Passover offering, the second Pesach in the desert, something they didn't have before. And then we have the second part of the Parsha, which seems to be completely opposite. The second part of the Parsha is when Jews come complaining to God, they want this, they want that. It really is, you read it and what's going on? How could this possibly be the same people? Here, a page or two before, everything seemed to be going good. Now, here, everything is imploding. So the Rebbe makes a very beautiful point, very interesting. And that is that inspiration is good, but ultimately, what is the purpose of the Jews being in the desert, and what is the purpose of us? Again, spoke about before, bringing Torah's light into the desert, as it were, the desert of the exile, the desert of a world filled with contradictions, and a world filled with conflict, and a world filled with hate and darkness, and so on and so forth. That is what we're meant to be doing. So when things are good, they're good. When things are going good, they're going good. But then, we really don't discover to the extent of how effective were we in bringing that message to the world. And again, to the world, I don't necessarily mean larger space of the neighborhood or the city or the town or the state that we live in, which is also important. But the world, I mean, our own psyche, our own perception, our own experience, because this is ultimately that which we can affect. That's what we're responsible for primarily. We're not really responsible for, on a macro scale, changing everything. Obviously there's something to be said for that as well. But this is more, when we read the Torah and the portions, it's important to know that what we read here speaks to each one of us here, first and foremost, before we start making conclusions about what does it say about social movements and so on and so on. Some rabbis start they start with the larger scheme, and then maybe eventually leads to the individual. Because this approach is not that. Oh, you start with here. You're able to change more. You move on. From there, you move forward. And the idea there being is that there are two ways to view rebellion, which is, again, one of the main, it's not the main, but it's really, an important part of this week's Torah portion is the rebellion of Jews against Moshe. Why they rebelled, and specifically, that's really, again, for later, but the general idea of rebellion. So a person can view rebellion, and again, sometimes within person himself. Sometimes things just don't seem to be going well. They were before, and then they stop going well. And rebellion in general. So a person say, rebellion means, rebellion is a negative indicator. I'm in a bad place, or the individual who's rebelling is in a bad place, or however you want to understand it, but the same idea. And you come down and you crush it, however, whatever that is. If it's within the person himself, say, I don't know what came over to me. It's all bad. Whatever it is, I gotta tune it out. I got to lock down. That's all. I just kind of, in English, the expression is, white knuckle it, right? Shlomo here is a driver, so you know what white knuckling means. If you're driving on the highway and you're going somewhere, it's really late, and you're really tired, but you can't or won't stop. So you press on the steering wheel, and you hold on so tight that your knuckles go white. It's called white knuckling. It's like you're driving through and over your tiredness, everything. You're pushing it through. You probably shouldn't, but you're not. There's no going back. So some people view rebellion, again, from wherever direction it might be, is something you got to white knuckle through. Right? That's one approach. Another approach is also a little bit more nuanced, which is that the purpose of the Jew and the purpose of the Torah, the purpose of the Beha'alotcha, is not only to ignite the fire within myself and everything, but is also to understand that even those negative aspects, again, of ourselves, the rebellion is not necessarily only negative indication. Rebellion, again, on the basic form, not speaking about all the political, but on the basic form, is a very serious dissatisfaction with the status quo. I'm really not happy with what's going on. So I can say, all right, deal with it. That's not my problem. You could, but or you can say, look, obviously there's a really deep discontent, or on the contrary, this is a way, a cry from the soul. It's a communication to me, or from me, that I want better for myself. So why would you want to necessarily just close it down? Why do you want to just shut it down? Again, we're not speaking about, again, I know everybody is hearing what I'm saying. Say, oh, now he's probably speaking about, no, that's maybe later. Right now, we're just speaking to the idea that the light of the Menorah, the Beha'alotcha, is meant to shine and illuminate that part of ourselves as well. To even see that aspect of our being, the rebellion, as a potential. It's a difficult one, but it's a potential. It's the hardest one. The easiest thing is to just truck right over it. And you'll just crush it. And again, wherever it might be coming from. Or you say, all right, so what is really here? What comes to mind? What comes to mind? Interesting, the Rebbe's approach to the youth movements of the 60s, in the late 60s, were across the board. Interesting enough, primarily, exclusively in the conservative movement and even in the Orthodox community, they saw it as a total negative. These uneducated kids, they're ungrateful, they're wild, they're loose, they're unhinged, they're druggies, they're anarchists. They weren't taught by their parents. They have no respect, so on and so on and so on and so on. Right? The old school approach. Kid, when I was your age, when I was in the army, I was wearing my umbrella. Here, your hair is long. You're wearing these loose clothing. That sort of thing. And the Rebbe said, look, why don't you actually hear what the youth is trying to communicate? They're dissatisfied. Most of them, at least the Jewish one, came from very proper suburban Jewish homes. And then the Judaism they grew up with was it was just cold, bland. There's no passion. Nobody was interested, not the rabbi and not the congregation. You expected the bar mitzvah boy to say, oh, today is an important day, now I'm a man. Why would he think so if nobody around him thought there was anything important to it either? So they grew up in these homes, and so they had this desire and a yearning to make a world a better place. So they ever said, why don't you see that? See this dissatisfaction not as just a rebellion of some wild unhinged kids and so on. See, yes, I should have to be channeled. You have to sit down and have to spend time. Here, find out what is it that where the pain is coming from. Find out what is it that they truly want. Forget for a minute. Long hair, they are smoking weed, they're not smoking weed. Separate conversation. But truly here what's being said in this communication. So in the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem said, he said himself, it's not a matter, it's not the meat that they want. They are really not interested in being told what to do by God. That was the underlying theme of it. So to go back again, this is a very long introduction. Beha'alotcha really means that the first part of the parsha, which speaks about tap into the inner fire of the soul, give it the ability to grow, give it the ability to illuminate, understand that all of the paths lead really, they emanate from one place and they go back to the same place. But also understand that this message is not only for when things are good, again, individually within the person or from the larger world, but even things where, and especially when things are not good. That is the time for Beha'alotcha to light that fire. Light it with love, first of all, not judgment, whether for yourself or for somebody else. Understand that inherently there's a godly fire in the soul within that just needs to be fed and needs to have the ability to grow. 2, nurture it. Don't walk away. Don't walk away. You already started the process. You're already involved. So don't say, now it's going to go. It's not going to grow. Be involved and help it grow to the point where it's able to kind of maintain its own maintain its own light. So that is sort of the again very long, but I think it gives you the sort of a bird's eye view of the arc of this week's parsha. Okay, so some key points. There's a lot we spoke about. We spoke about the menorah that Aaron had to go up on steps. Which is again, it's also an important point, which is a responsibility. It's not only if the light comes to you, you actually have to put steps and you have to go up to the lamp. And like Levim, speaking about things, the Levim are dedicated. It's in other words, again, the continuation, someone from last week's Torah portion, they finally came from the Almighty, and it says that Aaron and Moshe lifted up each Levi. So Shlomo here, it shouldn't have been that difficult to lift up. It doesn't weigh so much, but I would imagine some of his other brothers Levim who are a little bit on the heavy side, but I guess it was a miracle, as it were, that Moshe and Aaron were able to lift it up and dedicated each one of the Levim for the service of Hashem. Now comes to an interesting point, which is Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni is the episode in the desert where, by the way, I'm a little Chaim here. No, I just thank you.
We're looking.
The Pesach Sheni. So this is again going back a little bit. Chronological order here is completely off. Where did I go? Oh, here I went. Okay, the chronological is a bit off. After the Mishkan was dedicated, sometime halfway through, on the 8th day, for those who are familiar with the Parsha, there was an episode where it's Tisha. Okay. Episode of the Jews were commanded to bring the Korban Pesach, but and most of them did, except for a few of them. Now, who they were and why they were able to do it is a matter of debate and argument But suffice it to say, when the Jews were commanded to bring the Korban Pesach, these particular people were not able to participate. So the one known example are the people who were meant to take out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu from the Mishkan, but they were tummy. Regardless, they were tummy. They were contaminated, and therefore they were not available for the bringing of the Korban Pesach, like the rest of the Jews, like the rest of the Jewish people. And they came to Moshe Rabbeinu, with a complaint, Lama Nigora. Why are we worse than everybody else? Right? Everybody had the chance to participate, to bring the Korban Pesach, and we were left out. So Moshe Rabbeinu brought the complaint to Hashem and asked, so what do I answer? To which Hashem answered, okay. So on the 14th of Year, they're able to bring the Korban Pesach Sheni. Okay, so, we have one Pesach, for most people, for all people, I think it's more than enough. Having two Pesachs will be completely, it's like having three Yom Kippurs. It's way more than we can deal with. Now, the idea of Pesach Sheni is more symbolic. It doesn't really have any religious connotation. It doesn't have any religious obligations. You're able to, the only custom really that exists is some people, as a remembrance, will eat some shmur matzah, but there are no restrictions on that day. But nonetheless, the significance still remains. And the significance is that regardless of a person's station and situation in life, it's never too late. It's never too late. Which means that regardless of why is it that a person did not participate in Jewish life, why didn't he or she study Torah, observe mitzvah? That's a separate issue. And it could very well be that it was because of the person's own fault. He had the opportunity and I didn't take the opportunity. So too bad. Done. The boat has sailed. So this parsha, this episode teaches us an amazing thing. Because the will of the Jew is to observe God's mitzvahs, to do what he wants. And that will is so strong, it can actually override the fact that even logically, even according to the logic of the Torah, this person is no longer able to participate, and no longer theoretically should be counted as an active Jew, as an active participant of the Jewish people. But we tell them, no, that's how you look at it, but that's not how God looks at it. Pesach Sheni is opportunity, not only that one time in the desert, and not only on the 14th of year of a given year, but this idea always exists. From wherever you are, you pick yourself up, and you do whatever that you need to be done. So that is the idea of Pesach Sheni. Interesting enough, this really puts into perspective the idea that of Baal Tshuva. It says that he serves God b'chela yeser, with greatest strength. In other words, not to take no for an answer. Not from God, not from anybody else. This is, if I'm ready and I'm willing and able to serve Hashem, then what does it matter? My age or whatever, what people tell me. I'm able to decide. I'm able to do what I need to be doing. Okay, so past that point, there's a few other episodes. One of them is the sounding of the shofars, in order to, like I said, to guide the Jews in their movement through the desert. And then we come to an episode. So that's already by the sixth reading. Now we're entering really very interesting territory, which is by Shishi. We have what is referred to as the two inverted nuns, the letter nun, upside down. Now, the Rashi explains the reason, and it's upside down and separates between two pesukim. One of them, Vehi ben Saya Aaron Vayemer Moshe. And when the Aaron traveled, again, this is going back to a little bit to what we said before. Whenever those carrying the ark that Moses made and housed the broken tablets set out, Moshe will say to them, "Arise, O God, let your cloud go before, prepare the way for our journey. May your enemies who have gathered to attack us be scattered. May those who hate you and are therefore always pursuing us turn and flee from you." This is Vehib and Sarah Oren that is sung in synagogues whenever the Torah is taken out. The next part, the next pasuk, is also when, it's a similar idea, but also when, whenever they're ready to encamp. So so I'll read it for you. When the ark came to rest, Moshe would say, "Rest Hashem among the thousands and thousands of Israel." Okay? And between the first pasuk, these two pasukim, the beginning and the end, is the letter Nun. So Rashi explains that really this belongs before. And the reason why it's here is in order to make a separation between that which came before and between the two troubles. The troubles shouldn't follow each other. Now, what was it? What kind of trouble? I thought, Rabbi, you said that till now there were no troubles. Everything was good. It was beautiful. Right. The last reading right before this one, what does it speak about? It speaks about the Jews finally traveling from the Sinai desert where they received the Torah. They said, okay, what could possibly be wrong with that? So Rashi explains, yeah, they traveled, but it was more like a kid the last day of school, which is very appropriate for this time of the year, right? No more teachers, no more books, right? No more pencils, no more. Nobody uses pencils anymore, right? No more pencils, no more books, no more teachers' dirty looks. I remember that from third grade, many moons ago, right? You run out, in the worst case, you'll rip up whatever book, notebooks, whatever it was, but you're showing that, you're a kid. You have to sit there, you have to learn, you have to study, but now that it's over, I am out of here. I'm done. And this is the attitude with which the Jews left. Now you can say, what are they supposed to do? They were there, they studied, now to move on. But you didn't get the sense and say, oh my goodness, can we stay a little bit longer? Is there nothing else you can tell us? Are there not any more mitzvahs that we can learn more of? Right? That wasn't the case. They were done. And Rashi considers this to be a paronia. They consider it to be a negative aspect, a negative story. It's a negative. It does not show good on the Jewish people that they acted this way. What is the next episode? The episode in Taveira where the Jews complain and it says they were complaining. It doesn't actually tell us what they were complaining, but they're complaining. They looked and they found an excuse and they were just grumbling and a fire came and it started from one corner of the camp and rolled into another and killed a lot of people. Which, by the way, commentators say one edge of the camp to another means different extremes within the social order of the Jewish people as well. So these two psukim are in between. Why? Because you don't want to have to keep on going one bad story after another bad story after another bad story. So that's one explanation. And then another explanation, which is a very interesting one, which is that we, all of us here, are familiar with the idea, right, that the Chumash, the 5 books of the Torah, right? 5 books of the Torah. Our sages say, though, that there's not actually 5 books of the Torah. There's 7. How come I didn't hear this? What are the 7 books of the Torah? What are their names? So they don't have different names. And again, it's an explanation, not that the 5 books of the Torah, not 5 books, but you have Bereshis, Shmot, Vayikra. Then you have Bamidbar, the book we're in, from the beginning of the book up until the point where we are right now. That's book number 4. Book number 5 are the 2 psukim because they're closed off by 2 notes. It's a separate. It's got its own parsha. Book number 6. Book number 6 is from the end, like till the end of Nosri, and book number 7 is Book number 7 is a book of Dvarim. So he said, wow, that's confusing. Like, bad enough I have 5, but the rabbis say that this is how it's broken into. This is how it's broken up. So this is how this incident is explained. So next comes the point that I spoke of, which is that the Jews they were in the desert and they started complaining. So first complaint was, it said that God said, okay, they're complaining, and the fire rolled through, and killed many. But then the complaints didn't stop. Although I want to point out that in the chronology of things, right now at this point, hold on a second. I just need for some housekeeping. Some housekeeping. Okay. They wanted meat. The Jews wanted meat, and they came complaining. Now, first and foremost, it's important to understand that by this stage in the game, the Jews had a tremendous amount of meat that they took with them. In other words, they had cows, they had sheep, they had a lot. So they weren't lacking for meat. So where did this problem originate from? So Rashi points out that really the people who started complaining were the Erev, the Egyptians that tagged along with them. They were the Egyptian nobility. When they saw the Jews leaving, said, wherever they're going must be good. We're going to go with them. As often happens, okay, that tag along. But unlike the Jews, they were not really committed to the cause, as it were. They kind of went along for the line, and then they got tired of it. Laws, shmos, and so on and so forth. And to add to it and to make it a little bit more interesting, they complained that this bread that God gives us, the man, we're sick of it. It looks the same. Now, God Himself, writes in the Torah portion of the word. It says, "Do you know what they were complaining about? It was beautiful. The man was pleasing to the eye. It had the taste of whatever you wanted. It had the taste of whatever you wanted it to taste. It was the most amazing thing." And so, what did the man not possess? It was able to take on whatever flavor and taste the person wanted, besides a number of things. Melons, leeks would be onions, garlic, cucumbers, and salted fish. Those things, why? Because those foods are dangerous for pregnant women. Those foods they're very strong, very pungent. They're really not delicate foods, and the man is meant really to be a food for delicate people. Because food, when you eat it, if it's a delicate food, it sets you in a certain mind, sets you in a certain frame of mind. So, in addition to that, some of the commentators point out that as in every rebellion, as every argument, there's always more to the story. What was the more to the story? At about this time, the Jews received the specific laws and commandments regarding the laws of morality. Morality meaning who you can marry, who you can't marry, which relatives are appropriate, and so on and so forth. Okay? Interpersonal, sort of intimate relations and so on. And at this point, the Egyptians started complaining. This is not, as they say in English, you're killing my vibe. This is, I get it. Okay, yeah, you can't eat these. Yeah, are you going to tell me how I should live my personal life? You're gonna come into my bedroom and tell me how? No. Okay, all right, good. We're good now. We're done. And they started complaining. But you couldn't come out and complain like now, where I can choose for myself. I'm gonna do whatever I want. They use a euphemism. We want meat. We want fish. So Kliyakar, when the commentator says, really,
Я не
fish.
хочу слушать. Ничего интересного нет. Ну, что-то интересное, но это я слышала.
Fish, meat.
А? Я не хочу лыть.
Sorry about that. So, fish, meat. We are. We're adults. We'll take care. We'll take care of ourselves. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Hashem and says, "What are we? What are we? Like, how do I get into this? Why is this my problem? I can't provide for everything that they need." Now, in reality, Moshe Rabbeinu was really trying to say that, look, I can't provide for them, but don't hold it against them. In other words, they're just complaining. Okay, they're complaining because he knew that what the Jews were doing was not just a rebellion; they were actually questioning Hashem's ability to provide for them, which is full out treason, not just a rebellion. Not that just okay, we want to have more bread, we want to have more meat. They were in reality completely complaining against what Hashem was able to provide for them. Now they have a back and forth. Why? Because if Hashem was going to say, I'm not going to give them anything, so people are going to say, oh, Hashem is cheap. Look at this. He took the Jews out of Egypt. And he killed them. He killed them because, he ran out of food for them. So that can't happen. Now Moshe was trying to play it the other way. He said, okay, but whatever you can give them, they're not going to be happy anyways. In other words, the first reading of the story seems like what? That Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to take the responsibility off of himself and say, God, look, these are your people, you deal with them. But a deeper reading means absolutely opposite. Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to play it in a way where the Jews will not get punished. They will not get destroyed. Precisely for the reason, whatever you do for them, they're going to be happy anyway. So you punish them all, they're going to say, oh, he killed us all. You give them going to meet them, whatever you're going to do is going to come out as a negative. So better yet, just leave them alone. So this is the episode. This is really the biggest challenge that Moshe Rabbeinu had at this point. And primarily, his main problem was that in order to give and provide sustenance and food for the Jewish people, it went through him. And he wasn't able to do it on his own. So Hashem said, fine, well, I'll give you 70 elders. In other words, through you, I'm going to give a bit of your prophecy, a bit of your spirit. And it's going to be shared by 70 other elders. So 70 elders were meant to be gathered. And now, how do they decide who these 70 elders were going to be? So you had 6 elders from each one of the 12 tribes, right? Which comes out to the number 72. But you're only supposed to have 70 elders. So they made a lottery. They made a girl. They made 72 pieces of paper, with 2 of them being blank. So 70 would pull, paper saying elder, and 2 would be blank. Now, of the leaders of the Jewish people at the time, who were these who were chosen for this task? They were the elders. But how did they get to be the elders? They got to be the elders because when the Jews were in Egypt, and the slavery of Egypt just started, the Egyptians would punish the Jews if the Jews did not fulfill their quota. But they put somebody on, in other words, every group of Jewish builders had a person responsible for them. And if the quota wasn't met, these workers suffered a beating. So if the quota was 1,000 bricks from this group of people, and they only had 900, so it's not the workers that got the beating from the Egyptians. It's the person who was on top. So therefore, these elders, because they sacrificed themselves for the Jewish people in Egypt, now also got to be the people who will be representing them. But there were 2 who did not want to join. In other words, they were elders. The names of Eldad and Medad. And they did not want to participate. They were too humble. We're not prophets. We're just simple people. So that, yes, their names were chosen, as it were, but they stayed in their tent. They stayed They stayed back. So God said, because you, elder and maiden, are so humble, that you had the ability of, finally becoming elders and have a position of respect, you out of humility stayed in your tent. I'm going to reward you. What was the reward? The reward was that they would prophesize, unlike the other 68 elders who had prophecy just for that day, which they needed to in order to be able to really draw down again this great quantity of again birds, which we're going to discuss in a minute. But even for the future, which is a tremendous gift, prophecy is something that you can't. God gives it to you. Ruach HaKodesh is the lower level of prophecy, but that prophecy, what was the prophecy that they had? They were able to see into the future. That Moshe Rabbeinu was not going to lead the Jewish people into the desert. It was going to be Yeshua. Even though at this point, the decree of 40 years hasn't happened yet. So this was a big shock to everybody. The decree of 40 years happens in next week's Torah portion. At this point, it hasn't happened. And Yeshua comes and he tells Moshe Rabbeinu, why don't you tell him to stop? They're prophesying that you're going to die and now I'm going to lead the Jewish people. You can't go around saying that, right? It's like before an election, before whoever's elected, you say, "Oh, you already know who that the vice president is going to." You can't. It's not appropriate. It's not proper. So Moshe Rabbeinu replied an amazing thing. He said, "You're jealous. Look, an amazing thing. God granted prophecy to these two Jews. He gave them an amazing gift, and because of this gift, they were able to prophesy something. Wouldn't it be an amazing thing if all Jews were prophets? See, that's interesting. Some people say, you're right, shut them up. This is a rebellion, this is sedition, throw them out. Moshe Rabbeinu saw it for something else. Said, okay, fine. Maybe I'm not that thrilled with the message, but look at this. Look what is going on. You have this incredible gift of prophecy being bestowed. Wouldn't it be amazing if all Jews were prophets? Let everybody have the gift. Why should it only be limited to some people and not everybody else? Anyway, so it says that the wind blew, and you had a tremendous amount of slug of these birds that flew in, and it says that some people they ate it so much that they got sick of it. In other words, there was so much of a good thing that they were not able to absorb anymore. So it wasn't like the birds were poisonous. It says, oh, you want to have meat? Fine. How much meat do you want? I'm going to give you so much, and you're going to keep on eating. And as I was learning it, I asked myself a question. If a person is eating something and he doesn't like it, why would they not stop? Here it says, I'm going to give you so much till you're disgusted by it, till it's coming out of your nose. You would imagine that any normal person, till a point that you start feeling indigestion. I'm done. I'm not having that fourth plate of cholent, right? What are you doing? Yeah, most people, you eat a little bit. If you feel bad, you stop. But it's very possible that itself was a punishment. That the desire that they had was unnatural. They didn't need meat. They were just itching for something to complain about. And this is what it was. And God said, okay, if the desire is so strong, so overpowering, that your reason doesn't help you differentiate between what is wrong and what is right, so that is going to be a punishment. There's an interesting statement from our sages that if a person wants to do the right thing, he's helped. If a person wants to do the wrong thing, he's also helped. What does that mean? You can say it's free choice. Free choice means God is going to help you along. I'm with you, Bubba. Yeah, fine. You want to do a mitzvah? I'll make it easier for you. This mitzvah and many, many more. You want to do the other direction? All right, fine. Look, I'll work with you. Not only am I not going to stop you, I'll open the way for you. You want to experience it? That's just hate. I told you not. All right. My grandmother told me that when she, she left her house in the Ukraine. She was like 12 or something, 1912. She was born. So in the 20s, all of the little Ukrainian villages were emptying out. There was no food. So she went to Moscow, and she got a job, I guess probably in her early teens, working in a chocolate candy factory. So the first day on the job, or the second day on the job, the foreman says, okay, girls, I imagine it was mostly girls, you could eat whatever you want. Don't hold back. And they're like, wow, you just came from the Ukraine. They probably never had a chocolate candy here. And she said after a few days, nobody could look at it anymore. It was literally coming out of their nose. That was it for life. So here it was a very similar type of an experience. Hashem said that the desire is not coming out of a desire to because you're hungry. It's just to satisfy your lust and your animal cravings. I'm gonna give you as much as you want and more and more and more, and you're gonna keep on eating because the desire is not natural until you plats, until you literally pass out. Which is what happens. It says that some people died in a day, some in 3, some in 10. Question is whether it's the righteous that died right away or the sinners that died right away. It's really irrelevant because ultimately they died in a place called Kiver Ta'ava, the grave of desire, because that's what brought them to their final end. And now we come to the last and sort of the most interesting, not the most interesting, but a very interesting episode, which is Miriam, the sister, the older sister of Moshe Rabbeinu, had a very interesting conversation with her sister-in-law Tzipporah. Now, the conversation happened in the following context. After the episode of Eldad and Medad, when they went around prophesizing, Tzipporah was overheard saying, "Oh, I feel so bad for the wives of these two." And Miriam, it's an interesting statement. What would be possibly wrong with being a prophet? Sounds like an amazing thing. To which Tzipporah replied, "Yeah, because they're not able to fulfill their marital obligations." Speaking euphemistically, so I hope you understand because I'm sitting in my dining room. Why? Because according to Jewish law, after family relations, after intimacy, a person, in the olden days would have to go to mikveh before being able to, again, serve in the temple or bring sacrifice, so on and so forth. It would apply to men and women. It's an impurity of sorts. Well, it's not of sorts in the times of the temple. Now, these prophets, before communicating to God, before God communicating to them, will need to go to mikveh, which would make it, inconvenient for the wives because they don't quite know exactly when God is going to prophesy. So it's going to throw up the whole dynamic. The family dynamic is going to be a little bit thrown. Now, Miriam and Aaron were also prophets. Miriam had prophecy and Aaron had prophecy. And they said, wait a minute, we are both prophets. Oh, and Zipporah said, yeah, like I can relate to Eldad and Medad because me and my husband were actually, according to some opinions, they're literally divorced. They're not married. I don't know how they lived, but they were not living as a husband and wife. The reason for that being is because Moshe Rabbeinu was always on call because he didn't know when Hashem was gonna give him. He always had to be ready. He was like sort of you want to use the example, an EMT, a paramedic. You have your radio. You don't know. You could be at a birthday party. You could be at a wedding. You could be wherever you want. The radio goes off. You're out the door, and that's it. Everybody understands, but it's disappointing because I wish you were here. So that's how Moshe Rabbeinu was. He was always on call. He always had a little radio, as it were. He always communicated. Oh, God needs me here. Fine, guys. I'm out. I'm out of the house. So Miriam went to Aaron and she relayed this conversation, which was false step number 1. Because rather than going to Moshe and said, I just spoke to your wife, I'm not sure if I know all the details. Could they have some of the information wrong? But if I understand it correctly, she mentioned to me so on and so on. And I mean, if it's true, is there a way to fix it? Which is the way normal people handle a problem. You don't assume things and you go to the source. If A said something about B, then I'm not going to go to C to say something about B. I'm going to go to B and say, look, I heard something. I don't know. Could be a false rumor, and in which case I apologize. But if it's not, So Hashem got upset. Hashem got upset for a number of reasons. Number one, because Moshe, though he was a younger brother, he was in a whole different level. His level of prophecy was so much infinitely higher than that of Miriam, and Aaron that she shouldn't have been comparing, which is false step number 2. Often enough, what people happen is, oh, in that situation, you know what I did? I don't care what you did. This is not your situation. You know, those of us at the Baruch Hashem have older relatives, whatever. It's not selling the world over. You hear this once in a while. You tell me, I don't know. My kid got sick or something. Oh, but I remember when I was young and the kid got sick. I don't know. This is what they did to him. I don't know, maybe, or this is what I did. You start applying somebody else's experience to yours. First of all, a lot of times it doesn't sound good because this is my experience. You can either listen to me or not listen to me. But you're listening to me. You're telling me how in your situation was different. Why would that make me feel better? So 2, they compared their level of prophecy to Moshe Rabbeinu's level of prophecy, which is not the same. And finally, they greatly underestimated the fact that how much Hashem loved Moshe Rabbeinu. How do we know? Because Hashem himself says that this man, Moshe, Onav Me'od, he's not going to speak up for himself. He's going to let it go. Okay, so they said. But I, Hashem, am not going to let it go. Because you're speaking against my Moshe. In all of my house, he's trusted. He's the most trusted servant that I have. Hashem said. How dare you insinuate that he is being not right in his relationship? He's doing it because I told him to do it. So with this, I want to end off again. There's a few other points, but I think, again, I try to keep it to an hour. There's also another point when we speak about humility, and Moshe Rabbeinu was most, it says, Hashem called him the most humble man on the face of the earth. So the idea of humility, as most people understand it, is I'm going to sit here in the corner, I'm not going to say anything because I'm so humble. It's not humility. That's a lack of self-esteem. Humility is an appreciation that I am in fact talented. I'm talented because God gave me abilities that only I have. How do I know? Because I use them and I use them well. So I have them. They're mine. That's fine. And to the extent that I can and should be using them, the only person knows is me. And that's very humbling. Because a person that has no humility, he always assumes that he's in fact smarter and more talented than he really is. That's usually the case. People who are truly talented, generally speaking, not always, tend to underestimate themselves somewhat, which is not always bad. So humility means, yeah, I know what I have, good. So am I taka using it? Or am I letting it go to waste? Or am I letting it, am I hiding it under false lack of self-esteem, which in and of itself, really, it's a big shame. Because rather than accepting responsibility, both facts, that yes, I'm in fact worthy and capable of doing many good things, and 2, right? It's I don't have them because God said, him I like, him not so much, because him I like, no. God gave it to Taki likes you. Why he likes you has nothing to do with that because you have nice color eyes, because God chose you. That's amazing. It's humbling. I don't know why he chose me. If I had a choice in the matter, maybe I would say something else. Humility is accepting that God, he chose you. He chose you, not him. You he chose. And he chose you not because you happen to be the greatest person. He chose you because for reasons known to him. But therefore, based on that, rise up to the occasion and utilize your abilities to the extent they're meant to be utilized. With Moshe Rabbeinu, he always felt he did what he needed to do, but he always felt that there's more that can be done, and he also felt that he's not necessarily even worthy of this gift, right? That his whole purpose for being who he is to be a servant of God, but also to be a defender of the Jewish people, and he felt the complete responsibility for that. And therefore, he sort of walked this tightrope. And interesting enough, he says that another humility and prophecy walk hand in hand. That's what Elder Ameda murder to have prophecy, not just short term but long term. And so Moshe Rabbeinu, the more humble he was, the greater. In other words, it both they work together. They work together. Another humility, ability that I'm, God, that Rabbi gave me to do, also makes a person a little bit more refined, a little bit more spiritual. Again, humility and lack of self-esteem. I'm not going to go over it again. They're not the same thing. So that is Parshas Beha'alotcha. A lot of contrasts, but again, they all merge together if you follow that thread to see where it comes out. Anybody have any questions or anything you want to discuss? Now is the time. Now that we went through it all, everything is on the table.
Now, just one thing, and it's not really a contrast, but I'm thinking about Parshas Beshalach towards at Refidim, and before that, where they're complaining about the bitter waters, and then they're complaining at Refidim, and then now we're talking about in Beha'alotcha,